to my channel. My name is Landry, and today I am going to be talking about the recent episode of Best Medicine. Episode 4 aired last night, and if you're new, I have started a series on this channel where I talk all things Best Medicine as both a Best Medicine fan and a Doc Martin fan. And I have a playlist on my channel if you want to check out the previous episodes I've done. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about episode 4. And if you have not seen episode 4 yet, or if you haven't seen Best Medicine in general, you may not want to watch this video because I will be giving a lot of spoilers. And so you may want to wait until after seeing the recent episode before watching this. But yeah, let's dive into episode 4 of Best Medicine. I do want to start out by saying my thoughts of this episode was a little bit different than the past episodes. Episode 3, last week's episode, was one of my favorites because there was a lot of comedy in it and it really made me laugh. Where this week's episode, I liked it in a different way. I liked it because it was heartwarming. We got to see a lot of characters' relationships and the characters in general build. We got to learn a lot more about the characters, and it was going in ways where I've talked about in my previous episodes when I recap what I would like to see and hope to happen. I was getting to see some of that stuff that I was hoping for happen, and it just made me so happy. Don't get me wrong, there was a few things here and there that did make me crack up because of the humor of the little small town, but for the most part, it was heartwarming. It pulled at my heartstrings because of some of the moments. It was a really good, heartfelt episode, I felt like. It would be my top. Don't get me wrong, I've liked every single episode, but so far, episode 3 and 4 have been my favorites. Episode 1, it was good, but it was like you're getting to know the town. You're getting to see how what Dr. Best is like. So it was like that kind of. And then episode 2, you got to see a little bit more characters, getting to know them. And then by episode 3, you know the people and you're getting to see the comedy. You're really getting to see their personalities. And then this episode, you're learning more about the character in general, which I really love. So let's dive into episode 4, season 1 of Best Medicine. So first of all, we start out, I really did feel bad for Dr. Martin Best at the beginning of the episode. He's always dealing with something, and unfortunately he had to deal with the 3 teens that, for whatever reason, they like to heckle him, I guess you would say. Every time they see him, they always say something about him. And all he was doing was getting his newspaper, and there they were. And, it's the little things that make you laugh a little bit. They were like, oh, Doc, you only own one suit? And they were just talking, and I liked the little line, it's him in general. He was like, go ruin your future on somebody else's doorstep. And I just thought that was funny, because, for real, they just randomly choose his house of all places, and I guess I'm starting to think maybe it's because he's new, and it's a new person to make fun of, or heckle, but it's just so funny. And then, unfortunately, good morning, Dr. Best, you, get to have throw up go all over your shoes by these 3 teenagers. Well, it was the boy, Liam, that did it, but still, and I was like, he's having a wonderful day so far. And then the ladies getting ready cracked me up. Every single lady in that town, just getting ready, and for Blaze Day, and I was just laughing so hard because I was thinking, what on earth is Blaze Day? It's clearly something very, important to them, obviously, because they were getting ready. Even though you also see that Elaine is staying with Louisa. We haven't really seen her confirm that she is, but it looks like it because they're in the same bathroom getting ready. And of course, Louisa's like, oh, you're changing your hairstyle. And then you see Sally Milo putting the bandana around her neck brace. Just everybody's getting fancied up for whatever is about to happen. And then we also see that there is more than just the teenagers that are clearly getting sick or whatever with whatever's going around, because you see the doc trying to figure out what's going on with them, and the kids are being kids. He's not calling them by their right names, and they get mad about it. But I like the line when they say it's not that hard to remember our names, and he was like, "Well, Dr. Best was hard for you to manage," or something like that. And I thought, yeah, they're the ones calling him by Dr. Worst. They could at least call him by his proper name, and it was just so funny. And then they were like going on and on and on about how he has the vomit shoes on his feet and why is he wearing those. And then the line about him saying, well, I'm sure, let me take fashion advice from a teenager that's wearing flip-flops. I died laughing about that. Like the little teeny tiny comments that he doesn't find funny, but I find them funny because of the way he is sarcastic towards them, and they don't pick it up right away. I don't think some of them don't. And then also whenever he's like trying to find out where they ate and stuff, and they're like giving him a hard time about he said, what's your diet? And they were like, that's fat shaming. I was like, that's the generation today. They think the little comments, like it's a doctor, he's trying to help you. But I just found that funny. And he's like, I need all three of your brain cells together to find out what you ate last. Where did you go? And I died laughing about that. Once again, the little comments, his bluntness, but it's funny. And of course, the moment whenever they said it was Liam's birthday and they ate at the Salty Breeze, when the doc was like, at least he said happy birthday. I mean, he probably could care less, but he did say happy birthday, Liam. And then Liam's like, it's not my birthday. And the look on his face, he's probably thinking, this is why I don't do small talk. Because they clearly don't care. But I did think it was kind of nice of the doc in a way, even though you could tell he didn't really mean it. He still said happy birthday. He could have just let that go past his head like he does most things, but at least he was trying to be nice. And then the whole thing, whenever he told them they need to eat the brat diet, he said, you need to do brat or whatever. And they're like, what did you just call us? I died laughing because I was like, that is like, good job on the writer's part, sticking that in there, because they were, in my opinion, brats, but he was not clearly calling them that. He was talking about the brat diet, which they clearly didn't know what that was, and I just thought that was funny. And then, of course, we meet the janitor guy or whatever his name was, and he clearly has what they have. So immediately, the Dr. Best, Martin doesn't stop a beat, and he storms straight to the Salty Breeze, which that I'm not surprised. That is Dr. Best Martin's demeanor. That's how he acts. But he could have toned it down a little bit. I know I can't really say that because I know that's his personality. So it is what it is. But I did find it funny. He doesn't skip a beat. He storms into the Salty Breeze and he's like, I've had 4 cases come in with food poisoning and they ate at your establishment. And, it's like Greg's looking at him and he's like, well, good morning to you, Doc. Like, you could tell Greg's like, well, you're coming in here with a lot of information this morning. No joy, like, small talk, saying hello or anything. How am I doing? You just came in here and spilling this, and of course he's saying it out loud, and Greg's like, keep your voice down. And then Martin said he doesn't understand. What do you mean keep your voice down? Which I think he does, he just doesn't care. He's trying to get to the root of this problem. You have the lady that I died laughing about this part too. It was funny but not funny, but it was like the way the doc said it. It's just the way Martin is, the way he says things. The lady's eating her oatmeal and she's like, what is this I hear? Do I need to quit eating my oatmeal? And then Martin, it's your funeral. And I was like, that I died laughing. And of course, at that point, Greg is not happy, and he storms into the kitchen, and there's George, and George is the same way. He's like, good morning, like, what is going on? And then he's like asking him about the butter and everything, and the little corny joke that George about you better believe it. I did die laughing a little bit about that. It was corny, but it was still funny. And then the fact that they said that their restaurant is up to code, and then Brisket runs into the kitchen, like out of the kitchen, was so ironic and funny because you know, it is kind of a little unsanitary to have a pet like that in the kitchen. But, you know, in the episode 2, they were saying that Brisket's hygienic. She's the cleanest animal there is, or whatever. So in their minds, they don't think it's unhygienic. But of course, to the doc, that is frowned upon. And of course, you know, he's trying to do his job, but he has to do it in a way to make everybody upset with him. He calls the health inspector to inspect the restaurant. And of course, this makes Greg upset more than George, I think, because Greg's like, well, great, now I can't see Blaze. And then I'm like, who is Blaze? What is Blaze? It's Blaze Day. It must be a person because they kept saying, now I can't see Blaze. And so I was curious about that, but already where the doc is already getting himself into trouble, making people upset, which he does best. And so we move on to we have the sheriff Mark Milo at the in front of the office screaming or chanting Doc B. And I thought that was funny. And I do want to say, in the past, I felt like the sheriff has been a little too, what's the word? Silly, goofy, quirky, a little too over the top, kind of annoying at some points. And I did think that at first maybe that was because of the heartbreak situation of him being dumped by Louisa. But now, yes, he's still goofy, but I felt like he wasn't as annoying this week. And maybe it's because we didn't see as much of him, but I did laugh at the whole thing where he still thinks that him and the doc are best buds, and him doing the little chant. It cracked me up. It wasn't as annoying as some things that's happened in past episodes. But you know, it turns out that he needs Martin to go to the wilderness thing, which Martin has no clue what this wilderness thing is. None of us do yet. And he's like, let me guess, Dr. Reese was like first aid, and he's like, yes. And he wasn't gonna go at first, you know, he was like, I'm busy, but then he kind of, I guess he can tell, because he's the doctor and he wants to solve problems and everything, he ends up going. And I just felt bad. His poor shoes in this episode. First he gets barfed on, and now he goes to the wilderness, this terrain. He's not equipped for this terrain. I mean, he's wearing a suit and dress shoes, and he's traipsing through the mud right off the bat. And I was like, yeah, I don't think he's going to enjoy this. And then we find out why the ladies are acting the way they're acting. And I find it so funny that Martin in general, Dr. Best, I can see he wouldn't get it, but the fact that Sheriff Mark doesn't get it either is so funny to me. You know, they're standing there and they're like, he's coming. And they're like, and the doc's like, who's coming? Like, what is about to happen? And, you know, answer's like, you'll see. And so, it's this pretty much a hot guy, Stud Muffin, I guess you would say, is their wilderness instructor that teaches them how to live off the land in case of emergencies, and it happens once a year, and apparently it's only the ladies attend, with the exception of the doc and the sheriff, of course, it sounds like. And the fact that the sheriff was like, Mark was like, he's like, why are they here? And Mark was like, I guess they're really into learning about survival and safety. I was like, no. Look at this guy. Clearly they all have feelings for him, like they think he's attractive. Like, can you not see that, guys? Like, Martin, I can understand you don't get it, but Mark, really? But it was just so funny, and you know, right off the bat they're like flirting with him. And I do want to back up to when we're learning that Elaine is not going to be doing her social media for once, which I was happy about that, because I feel like we got to see a side of Elaine that I've really wanted to see, like her without the phone, which was super nice. And her and Louisa had a talk as they're walking, and she's like, right now she's upset because her mom's getting married to Dum Dum, and she needed a break from social media. So it's nice to see her, this side of her without social media. But it was just, like I said, it's so funny that there's this attractive guy that is teaching them how to survive, and both Mark and Martin are so confused about this. And it was just so funny. They were like basically acting like they had no clue what to do. Like, for example, Sally was like, how do I hold a compass? I don't know which way is north. And all of them were acting like they had no clue. And they were like shaking their heads. And Martin was like, really? Are you serious? And I'm like, they want him to help them. They really like him. And then you have the moment where he was talking about, let's get to CPR, and Martin was like, good, finally something I can talk about. And he's like, I'm good, Doc. And he's like, it's Dr. Best, actually. That's my name. Not my name. Dr. Best is my name. And I was like, Martin being Martin. And he's like, good, I'm glad I'm needed in the woods or whatever. And it was so funny, and then quickly turned awkward because when they're talking about CPR, he's like, Mark, Louisa. This is Blaze talking. He's like, Mark, Louisa, you're a couple. Why don't you do a demonstration? And it's like, oh boy. Because, you could see the look on both Louisa and Mark's face. And Mark's like, she dumped me. She cut my heart out of my body. And Louisa's like, yeah, it was not really a way to reach you. My bad, or whatever. It turned really awkward really fast. And then the comment Blaze, saying, oh, so you're single now. And the look on Mark's face, it's hurting him. And then even Martin's face was like a little bit, I think he was even thinking, what? Rome plays? This is not the right time for that, or whatever. And you could tell immediately that Blaze is like falling for Louisa, because he wants to immediately do demonstrations with her, like the bow and arrow, getting so close and personal. And you could tell all the other girls are like upset and jealous because Louise is the one that's being picked and treated like this. And you can tell Louisa is not enjoying it whatsoever. But they obviously don't know that. They think that she is, because all they can see is her and him doing. And then the hypothermia thing. And then poor Mark was like, okay, I gotta go. That's enough. I can't. It's time to go, or whatever. And there's enough crime, or whatever. And then I couldn't tell if Martin's reaction was enough of that, Blaze, or there's enough of that, meaning there's enough of crime for Mark to leave. I don't know which way it was supposed to be, but it was still funny that both of them were having enough of that. And then the whole thing where it's time to learn about tourniquets or whatever. That was another thing. Clearly Mark and Martin are blind. They were like, Sally, the pharmacist, is like, how far up do you need to put the tourniquet? And Dr. Best is doing a demonstration. Poor Mark. You can tell Mark is not enjoying that, but Martin could care less when he was putting the tourniquet on his leg. And he's like, I'm showing you right here. He still did not understand that they were putting on a show because of this attractive guy. And then, he's just shaking his head. They're just not understanding it. And then the piggyback ride thing, somebody to volunteer so I can carry them on my back. And then he gets tackled. Poor guy. Just too many women think he's attractive, and he gets tackled. And then that was the end of the wilderness camp, or the wilderness workshop, because he's now injured. And so we have that going on, and he finally gets back to the doctor's office, and the doctor's trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And there's a lot going on because he's trying to get the x-ray he was doing an x-ray, and he was trying to get the x-ray pulled up, and there's no internet, and of course, it's too much to it's good to see Elaine off the social media for once and kind of doing her job, kind of, but it wouldn't be comedy, it wouldn't be funny if she didn't still be herself, because he calls her in, and um he's like, I need you to fix the internet. When he asks her what's wrong, and she's like, the internet's down. He's like, I need you to fix the internet. And she's like, you fix the internet. He's like, no, I pay you to fix it, or whatever. And then even the Blaze guy is like, she is a terrible assistant. And he was like, thank you. And then he's like, I still don't like you. And I died laughing because, he's still himself. He's like, I still don't like you. And he said, and then the Blaze guy was like, yeah, most men don't. And I just thought that was so funny, because I'm wondering if he wonders why men don't like him. I mean, clearly, can't you see? All the ladies fall for you, dude. But we have that, and of course, Martin's trying to call Al to fix the internet, because that's what Elaine said to do, call Al. And we get the phone's ringing, and it's because Bert and Al are in his kitchen, which is so funny because while this is all going on in the woods, Bert and Al sees the dog scratching on the door. And when he's like, we have 15 minutes, I was like, oh no, what are they about to do? Are they about to let the dog in the dog's house? Like, what is about to happen? I knew something was not going to go right, and sure enough, and also back up to that, when that is happening, the little moment we had with Bert and Al, father and son, having a conversation, Bert's telling Al, if you like Elaine, you need to ask her out. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a conversation with your parent without a corny thing. He's like, don't live in the friend zone forever, or however he said it. And I was like, do you even know what that is? And I just thought that was funny, because that's like a typical parent son or daughter moment, pretty much, whenever you're having a conversation. And sure enough, of course, they're doing something at the dog's house for the dog. They install a doggy door so the dog can leave and come in anytime he wants to. And of course, Martin is not happy about that. Martin still thinks that the dog is not his, which it isn't, but in his mind, he does not like dogs, and this dog is not his. It doesn't like him either, but it sits at his feet, so that's what's so funny, is like this dog came attached to him, but he doesn't want to have anything to do with the dog. So there's still the comedy with the dog, and now there's a doggy door, where the dog can go in and out, which is so funny. But finally, Al is going to look at the internet, and when he goes back, Martin goes back, Blaze is gone. He just magically disappears. So we have that. Then we have the whole thing where we get to see Al open up, a more of Elaine and Al opening up. And I like this because Elaine is for once not on her social media. She's actually connecting, talking to people. And I think she's finally realizing that Al is cute and that he is smart, and I think they just need to get together. I think they're a perfect match. I mean, she's like talking to him when he's trying to fix the internet, and she's like, since when did you get so good at this, or know about this? And he's like, I just kind of had a thing for computers. And she's like, you're really smart. And they're really like talking, and you can tell that she's actually happy talking to him, and he's been happy talking to her, and I think he's finally happy that she's actually paying him attention. And then of course you have the mom storms in, and Elaine doesn't want to talk to her mom. That's the whole thing. She's kind of ignoring her texts and everything, because apparently Elaine's mom is getting married to Dum Dum pretty soon. But this can't happen because the Salty Breeze has been shut down, which that was so funny too, the whole thing about the Salty Breeze being shut down, because you have the health inspector coming to check the Salty Breeze, and they got an A-OK approval, like it was nothing wrong with it. It was the cleanest restaurant that health inspector's ever seen. But of course the doc has to say, being the doc, oh, I'm surprised that it's got a good sanitation rate. considering there's a pig in the kitchen, and of course the health inspector finds the pig in the closet or whatever, and immediately they get shut down. And they're mad at Martin because he said that, because they were almost in the clear, and clearly Martin does not care. He, in his mind, he's stopping a outbreak of foodborne illness around the community, of people getting sick. He doesn't care the fact that they care about this pig as their pet. He just wants to keep the town from getting sick. So, that was another thing. Poor Brisket. Looks like Brisket is not welcome, and that Greg and George doesn't have a restaurant right now. So we have all that, and so that's why Elaine's mom is mad. She wants to talk to him because he shut down the Salty Breeze. And of course, Elaine's immediately happy because that means the wedding's off, because she does not want this wedding. And we do learn that apparently it sounds like maybe her mom and dad are separated. I couldn't really tell in the last episode about that. I didn't know if maybe he passed away or something, because the whole thing about her mom said we've been through a lot. I couldn't figure that out, and now we're learning that maybe they're just separated and he's still alive because of what was said about Elaine said, oh, so you're just going to move on from dad or whatever. So I'm still wondering about that. So you have now Elaine is happy with the doc, like she's liking him more because he shut down the he didn't shut down the Salty Breeze in his mind, but he did in a way. He says the health inspector did, but anyway, she's happy that the wedding's off, so she's happy with him right now because in her mind, he's the one that caused it. So we got to see that, and now Al is trying to talk the doc into letting him be the IT guy to take care of internet problems and stuff like that. And at first, I didn't think Dr. Bess Martin was going to be keen on that because, he was like, oh, you want me to pay you to fix this and that? I don't think so. And then finally, he is like, okay, fine, you can do that, because Elaine's like, well, he can digitize the files, the old medical records. And then I think finally Martin was like, okay, I think he was like, this is going to be helpful, might as well. But then, he had to be himself. He had to say, but no giggling, and they were like, giggle, we don't giggle. And then they start laughing, which is so funny. And then you have Aunt Sarah storming in, and we learned that Martin James Best is his full name because she is storming in, not happy with him whatsoever. And you're got to be wondering, what on earth has he done to make her upset? And it turns out it's about him getting the Salty Breeze shut down. And, once again, he is keen set that he did not shut the place down. He called it in because that is protocol, that the person they should be mad at is the food health inspector. He doesn't think that because he told the health inspector about the brisket, the pig being in the kitchen, that it's his fault in his mind, that's just it didn't pass inspection. And Aunt Sarah's really mad at him, and she just lets him have it. I mean, she's talking about how she stood by him, and talking about how the Salty Breeze is the community heart of the community, and how that place means the world to everybody. George and Greg love everyone, and by taking away their restaurant and brisket, you're taking away their livelihood. And she's just talking about how she stood by him, but she doesn't agree. He's rude and this and that and the other, and she's just like letting him have it. And he's like, no, it's not that I don't care. I do. I like to fix people's problems, but I don't care about the community aspect. I don't care about the festivals and all this and that. And, she did not take that for an answer. She basically, I couldn't believe she said it, and it kind of like made me feel bad for him when she said, maybe you're not meant to be here. Maybe you should just leave. Just because you're not happy doesn't mean you can't let the rest of us be happy, and basically tells him that maybe he should leave. And I was like, even for her to say that, I felt so bad for him, because he just, I don't, I really don't know how to feel about this. Like, I think, yes, he can be a little bit rude and cranky, like blunt, and he has terrible bedside manner and everything. But at the same time, like, I think this Rosemary thing and what happened in Boston really is affecting him. That's why he acts like this. And so when she said that, I did feel really bad. And then, of course, you could tell that it hurt him a little bit. He wouldn't admit it, but it did hurt him. And we then learn that the internet, Al did fix the internet because we learned that there is something clearly wrong with this Blaze guy. Not fractured bones or anything, but that he has an aortic dissection, meaning the heart. There's something seriously wrong with the heart. And then back to the whole thing of the town being mad at him, the little things that were being said cracked me up. Whenever you had that one lady that happened to have the kid that had the brown-tailed moth, whatever, but didn't, and they had the upset stomach, and they were making the sounds and everything in episode 2. She comes in and he's like, can I help you? And she's like, I have to give you a piece of my mind. And the fact that he's himself, he says, oh, do you accept returns then? I died laughing about that, like the little comments. The whole thing was she likes to go get Sunday shakes with her daughter, and she can't do that because the Salty Breeze closed. And he's like, well, why don't you make them yourself then? And I was like, this is just too funny. He does not care that they are very mad at him. And then the whole thing when George and Greg pull up in their car with Brisket, and they just like are honking the horn, they're mad at him. As I can see why they are, because he just got their restaurant shut down. And their little pet pig, Brisket, they love her as their child, and they're upset that they're having to take her away. And you're getting to see a side of Greg and George you've never seen before. They're like, we stuck up for you, and you are rude, and this and that. And like Martin's like, I don't care what people say about me. Like, clearly they still don't see that he does not care. And they're like, we're gonna have to take Brisket away now. We're gonna have her go live with Paisley. So it sounds like found out there's another pig in this town that Brisket is friends with, which is so funny. So we got to see a side of Greg and George. They are really upset about their restaurant, as they should be, and then the pig, Brisket, having to be taken away. So poor Martin is just, everybody is mad at him because he has closed the Salty Breeze. And then the fact that this Blaze guy is nowhere to be found, and there's no way to contact him, is just so funny. He lives off the grid, and it's like Dr. Best Martin can't comprehend that, because he's like asking Elaine, we need to get to him right away. This is a life-threatening situation. He could die. And he's like, do you have a phone number? And she's like, no. Do you have a way to contact him? No. Well, how do you get a hold of him? And she's like, we don't. He comes once a year. She's like, he just comes once a year. Whenever we need him to do the survival workshop. And it's like, Martin just doesn't understand this. He's like so confused. And he says the comment being himself. He's like, well, this guy is going to, that lives in the woods is going to end up dying in the woods. And then, Elaine kind of puts him in his place, because she's like, you can't say that. Why are you being so callous? You're a doctor. You need to, like, help this person. And, he's like set in his mind, I can't, because I don't know where he is. And she just kind of like puts him in his place, because she's like, you are going to there's a way to find him. And he's like, well, if you have an idea. And then the whole thing when she went out the window and started going caca was so funny to me, because I was like, what is she doing? Like, is this a joke? Because you could even tell he was like, what is going on? And turns out, I guess she was calling the ladies, because all the ladies came to help him, despite them being mad at him because the Salty Breeze is closed. And then the whole thing, whenever they're like, we'll help you, but don't expect anything or whatever, they're still mad at him. And he's like, well, thanks for coming if you can manage to find the way or whatever. And immediately he eats those words, because immediately they start to show that they really know, they were paying attention and know what they're doing, that each person doesn't skip a beat. They're like, need to find the course, find this to get the compass out, you need to remember to adjust this and that, and they got the radio set to channel 5 and this and that. And Martin's face is like, what? And he looks at Elaine and he's like, you mean they knew how to do this whole entire time? And then the fact that she says, you really don't know anything about women, do you, Doc? And I was like, that is so funny. No, he is blind. He does not realize that they are acting like this because it's an attractive guy, and it's just so funny. And then, of course, we get to see a good little connection between him and Louisa this week. It all starts out when he's trying to find out about this foodborne illness thing. Where is it coming from? And she comes immediately to him and is like mad at him because he shut down the salty breeze. And he's defensive, I didn't shut it down or whatever, it was the health inspector. And then clearly you can tell a tone shifts when she says, I had the bug last night myself. And you can tell he immediately gets concerned, because it's like, are you okay? What's wrong? Like, what happened? And then, of course, it wouldn't be a Martin moment if Martin didn't say the wrong thing at the wrong time. It looks like a heartfelt moment, because Louisa is like telling him, because he's genuinely concerned about her health. When she tells him about she just was throwing up and everything, and he was like, well, did you have diarrhea like that? And she was like, really, Doc? And she's like, well, it came more from the attic than it did the basement, which I thought that was funny of saying it, because I was like, that's a pretty clever way of saying it. I like that the writers put that in too. And so I found that a little funny. And then, of course, he grabs her and he's like looking at her. And I was like, oh, they're having a moment. And then he clearly had to ruin it when he said, well, I'm going to need a stool sample. And I was like, that's Martin right there. You can't have a heartfelt moment without him saying something wrong. So then we go moving forward back to the woods. Nobody wants to be his partner in the search for looking for Blaze. So Louisa is the one that says, I'll be your partner. In other words, despite her being upset with him too that the Salty Breeze is closed, he got it shut down, she still is going to help him, because let's face it, he would probably get lost in the woods if he didn't have a partner. And so we get to see a little bit of her and him having more of a conversation, connecting in the woods, because she's talking to him about, you really know how to make people upset, don't you? He's like, that's my specialty in this town, apparently, because every episode he's done something to make them upset with him. And then he finally was like asking her, how do you do it? How are you so happy and positive all the time? Do you not, for once, want to be mad at somebody? And she opens up to him and is like, yeah, sometimes I like to scream. And then she brings up the principal, because in last week's episode we found out that the school's in jeopardy and the principal clearly doesn't care. And so then it was like they're talking about it. When they're having that conversation, he learns a key detail, that the principal is even been sick. And so then it looks like he's put two and two together to solve this. And of course, Louisa trips and face plants. Which then we get to see another side of Martin, that he really cares about her, because he immediately stops everything and he goes to her. Don't get me wrong, whenever there's an emergency situation for anybody, he goes and steps right in to try to help them. But you can tell that he has more of a special interest in Louisa, because the way he acts towards her, he has a little bit more compassion with her. And of course, her head's bleeding and he's worried about her, and then he instantly kind of gets squeamish because of the blood thing. And he kind of drops her head and she says, ow. And of course, he doesn't say the right thing because he never knows how to say the right thing. She's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And he's like, "Your face." And she thinks that she takes it the wrong way, and she says, "Oh, great. So I have a ugly face or disgusting face." And he's like, "No, no, no." And then they get interrupted because the other people's film Blaze. So once again, another heartfelt moment between the two, and then he messes up by saying the wrong thing, which looks like this is going to be a reoccurring thing. And so they find Blaze. He's not breathing or anything, so they're having to do CPR. And whenever Martin's like, "You're going to have to remove his shirt," that one woman, the one that was from the city council, that dove right in, and I didn't think she was going to. I thought she was either going to faint. She couldn't move which was so funny when she did that, and Aunt Sarah and Elaine had to pull her away from him, and it turns out that they had to use the AED monitor or whatever to shock him back to life, and he immediately gets sent to the nearby town hospital. And the thing that really cracked me up too was at the end when Blaze sees Louisa and he asks her if whenever he gets out of the hospital would she go hike with him to a sunset. And Martin interrupts him, is like, "Clearly the only thing you're going to be hiking to is the couch, and you're with your heart condition." And he's like, "I don't have a couch." And I just thought that was so funny because you can tell that I think Martin's jealous that this guy is attracted to Louisa, even though Louisa clearly isn't attracted to him. And so that was funny too, the little, immediately the doc saying. Now we jump to what is causing this food born illness bug. Turns out that it's the school, and we see the doc having to ask Louisa for help. And so they're in the kitchen looking, and it turns out that they are serving expired meat, hamburger meat, to the students. And then we also learned something very shocking. I did not see this coming whatsoever. We finally learn who Dum Dum is. Turns out it is the principal of the school that Elaine's mom is marrying, which now I see where he gets the name Dum Dum from, because he is not very smart. He doesn't think that there is anything wrong with serving expired food to students and staff, which is very nasty, in my opinion. I think that they need to get a new principal after this, because he has caused a very serious health problem, and the well-being of the students and staff has been affected. And in his defense, he's like, first of all, he's upset that they wasted his time coming because he's getting ready to get married. Second of all, he says that he's stressed that basically says it's the budget cuts fault, the school council's fault, the budget cuts. It has nothing to do with him, which, in my opinion, you could throw that food away. But anyway. And then turns out it sounds like he doesn't really care about expiration dates, because he was like, "I eat this and that and this and it's expired in my refrigerator," and I'm like, "Ew, that's just nasty." And even the doc was like, "That's disgusting." And Louise was like, "No, you shouldn't do that. That's not good." And so we finally learned that it was not the salty breeze, it was the school all this time causing the foodborne illness. And then we see that that was funny too when the doc says, "So you're Dum Dum?" And the principal looks at him like, "What are you talking about?" And even Louisa's smile, I think she thinks it's funny, but she can't really do that because that's her boss. And then at the end when he says, "You really are a Dum Dum," I just thought that was so funny. And then Louisa says, "Well, someone else is too," looking at him, meaning the fact that he's shut down the salty breeze for no reason. Then you immediately see he calls the health inspector to get the salty breeze opened back up. So now, because he's done that, that means that the wedding is on, and it looks like Elaine's mom is getting married to the principal, Dum Dum. So we have all that, and of course, we still don't know about Brisket the pig. It seems like Brisket is not going to be allowed in the restaurant anymore, which is understandable, but at the same time, I love brisket. I think it's a cute a pet character. And then slowly, as we're seeing Greg and George talk about it, we could build a shed in the backyard. They're like trying to figure out ways to keep poor brisket. And then it's like, but she's not a farm animal. That was another thing. Martin thinks that it's a farm animal, doesn't realize that it is their pet. They really love this pig, and he just doesn't seem to understand or care, pretty much. And then we turns out that Martin has a heart after all. He ends up making some calls to where they could get their brisket back, which I thought was so nice in the end. He clearly might not understand it, but he clearly cares enough to do something like that, whether he will admit it or not. And then it's time for the wedding, and we have everyone's at the wedding, but the daughter of the bride, which is Elaine. Elaine is in the doctor's office, kind of getting drunk. She's already had 2 beers, and she's on her 3rd beer, and she is just not happy whatsoever. And at first, Martin was being himself, Dr. Best was being himself. He was like, "What are you doing here?" And then I think he clearly can tell that she is in pain, hurting, because, he may not care to admit that he cares, but once again, like in the last episode, if he didn't care, why is he, interacting with her? And, she just kind of, spills it out to him that she's not happy, that they're getting married, and, you should have met my dad, and she's, opening up to him about her dad. And then I thought it was, a breakthrough moment, because he opens up to her, too, because he says, I understand what you're going through. And she's like, how do you know what I'm going through? And then he opens up about Rosemary, his sister, the 8-year-old sister he had that died in a car accident. And I thought it was really a breakthrough moment. I think he clearly cares for Elaine and wants to be kind of a father figure, like I said in last week's episode, because not many people he's telling about this sister he had and her dying. I mean, the only person he's told, other than Aunt Sarah knowing being his aunt, is he's told Louisa at the baked bean supper, and now he's telling Elaine. So it looks like, in my opinion, he's only telling if he cares about somebody and he knows he can trust them, that's the people that he is sharing this information. Plus, the only person, and he didn't necessarily want them to know about this, but they kind of figured it out, was Elaine knows about the blood phobia. She figured that out on episode 1 when she helped him in the bathroom. So, clearly he trusts her enough to tell her about his sister. And, I just thought that was a heartwarming moment, just seeing both of them, connect with that, because she's literally telling him everything. She's in a vulnerable emotional state, and she needed somebody to talk to, and I'm just so happy he listened, and he kind of talked. Now, he still, with that being said, was being himself, because he did say, he stopped her, and he's like, you probably don't want to be sitting on the floor, it's filthy, with a dog going in and out, which I thought was funny. And then the comment where she says, how of all the people did she pick Dum Dum to marry, meaning her mom picking him? And he's like, I guess love is blind. It was not a question that needed to be answered. It was a rhetorical question, but for him to answer it was just so funny. But it just, that needed to be put in there, because it needed to show that despite him being in a heartfelt moment, he still can't still being his awkward, rude self. He had to stick that in there for his personality. And then it turns out she's going to go to the wedding after all, but she's clearly drunk. And of course, he doesn't want to help her whatsoever, but it turns out that she convinces him to walk her to the wedding venue because she can't walk herself. And despite him wanting to go to the wedding, it looks like he's going to have to go anyway, because he ends up having to walk her down the whole entire aisle to her seat, which I thought was funny. And I thought it was like a sweet moment, but then of course you can't have it a sweet moment. He kind of like pushes her and shoves her down in her seat, and like he then immediately walks to his seat, which is so funny. And then we find out how the doc pulled the strings to get Brisket um her home back. It turns out that he made some calls to make Brisket a service animal, which I thought was cute and so nice of him to do, whether he will admit it or not. And we have the wedding, and Brisket's carrying the rings, and then everybody is basically happy with him again for now because he opened the Salty Breeze back up. And even Aunt Sarah was like, "Oh, look at you bending the rules to get Brisket back to Greg and George," and he just can't clearly admit it. He's like, "Well, I just made some calls. Sometimes it's okay to bend the rules. Like, it's okay if he says it." But immediately when somebody else says it, he doesn't like that. And it goes back to Louisa talking to him and Elaine talking to him about sometimes it's okay to bend the rules if it helps to not hurt the person or whatever, and so clearly he's thought about that. Now, has he changed? No, he's going to be the same Doc that he's been. He's going to keep making the town upset with him, but at least he, in his mind, made it better in the end with getting Brisket back to Greg and George. And that was episode 4. Like I said at the beginning, I felt that episode 4 was more heartwarming than funny, in a good way. And let's dig into what I liked, and what I'm hoping for in the characters. So I'm loving that we're getting to see more and more of these characters and learning more and more about the characters and seeing their relationships grow. I loved seeing the heart-to-heart with Louisa and Martin. You can tell that there might be a little love connection coming in the future. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. Even though it was awkward in some moments because he made them awkward because of the things he said, that's just how his demeanor is, and I just think that's funny for the show. That's what makes it perfect, because you can't have it heart to heart all the time and not have something funny happen. So I'm happy with the growth of Louisa and Martin's relationship, and hopefully this will continue. I love to see that Al and Elaine are connecting more now that she was off of her phone this week. That was one thing I loved about Elaine's character, is being off of the social media and actually getting to see a normal side of her outside of screen time. Hopefully that's a reoccurring thing and not just a thing where just because she was upset with her mom. And hopefully their connection will grow more and they will become boyfriend and girlfriend in the future. I think it was sweet to see a little bit of Al and Bert, father and son, having a talk about Elaine. Him having a crush and his dad encouraging him to go for it, ask her out. Thought that was cute. And I love the little heart-to-heart moment between Elaine and Martin, Dr. Best, at the end of the show when she was not going to go to the wedding. And her opening up to him about her father and why she doesn't want to go, and him opening up to her about the whole Rosemary, his sister, dying in a car accident thing. Even though also it had to turn him having to be himself to keep it from being totally heartwarming, but still, I was very happy and excited about that. So, yeah, that was episode 4, and what do I look forward next week? I hope forward to seeing more of these relationships grow, and I hope to see Brisket more now that we have Brisket back. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are a Doc Martin fan and you're curious to see my perspective as a Doc Martin fan, come on, let's talk about it. And if you have not seen Doc Martin yet and you're just watching Best Medicine, you probably don't want to watch this part of the video because there will be spoilers of Doc Martin. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode as much as I did, and I will see you back here next week for episode 5. Take care for now. So, if you stuck around to the end, that means that you are a Doc Martin fan like myself, and you have maybe fallen in love with Best Medicine just as much, which I have. I'm loving both. Obviously, love Doc Martin, but I'm loving Best Medicine as well. So, I thought I would dive into what I thought of it as a Doc Martin fan. So, first of all, I want to say that I was really pleased with this week's episode in a Doc Martin fan perspective because I felt like this episode, for once, had nothing to do with the original. And what do I mean by that? There was a few things here and there that were the same, but as for the medical mystery and the whole episode had nothing to do. They did not steal the idea from Doc Martin. Nothing that happened in this week's episode happened in the original that would give you spoilers, which was super nice because, in episode 1 is basically a copycat. Literally, you knew what was happening from the beginning to the end. Episode 2, they took ideas, but still, if you were a Doc Martin fan and you've recently seen the series, you knew kind of what was going to happen. Same thing with episode 3. They took an idea, so you kind of knew what was going to happen, just the approach of the doc solving the problem was a little bit different. This episode was just new to us pretty much. Now, there was a few things here and there that were the same, and what am I talking about? The whole thing with the Elaine's parents getting remarried. In the original, Elaine's father is getting remarried to this lady that she doesn't like because of the lady with the pocketbook dog. She doesn't like her. Where in our version, Elaine doesn't like Dum Dum, the guy that her mom is getting ready to marry. And it turns out he's the principal, which I did not see that coming. It's also a little bit different because in the original, the doc kind of talks to her like he's like trying to be sympathetic towards her because he's like, well, don't you think maybe you should go? And she kind of gets mad at him and storms off. Where in this one, Dr. Bess Martin gets really, really in depth in empathy towards Elaine because he opens up about him losing a sister and knowing what she's going through. So I thought that was nice. Plus, we got to see a little bit more of Martin. I think Dr. Best is really different between Martin and Liam because I don't back to like whenever he saved the pig brisket from so that it could go back to the restaurant. Dr. Martin Elliam in the original would not have done that. So there is a little bit difference between the two. Dr. Best is a little bit more considerate. Not saying he still has the same bluntness and rudeness to him as Elliam does, but he does still have a heart to him. A little bit more of a heart, I think, towards people. Another thing that was the same is we're learning more about Al. In the original, Al was into computers, and in the second episode, whenever Al wants to go to computer school and Bert wants to give him enough money to be able to do what he loves, Bert was getting the town sick with the water. Doc Martin was like, well, why don't Al come to the surgery and fix the internet from time to time? Like he was trying to help him build a client base so that he could do what he wanted. Where on our episode, it was more like Al was pushing the idea towards the doc. Doc was not keen on it, but he in the end does agree. So now Al is going to be doing IT stuff for the doctor's office. And I think that's good. Elaine was really wanting that because she wants to see him more. We also have, that was similar, was the whole thing with the person coming down with the food poisoning. In the original, there was an episode where the girl wrote a review saying that Bert's restaurant caused her to get food poisoning. And turns out it was not his restaurant. Similar occurrence here in the our version, where the doc immediately thinks it's the Salty Breeze, and it turns out to be the school. But with that being kind of similar, it still was not like the past episodes. You really wouldn't know what's going on right away, which was super nice. And then I liked why this episode was different is because this whole wilderness survival workshop, there was nothing like that in the original. I mean, yeah, it kind of goes back to the episode where not the sheriff, but Mark Milo in the original wants to go out on a camping trip for his bachelor party or whatever, and it's him and Al, and he ends up getting bit by the snake, and the doc had to go find him. So it was kind of like that, but that was the police officer. There was no Blaze character in the original, which was nice. So that was kind of, if you could kind of put two and two together with that and similarities, but it really wasn't similar, if you know what I'm saying. And then I think that was pretty much it. Oh, the Blaze character was kind of giving me Danny vibes from the original. The guy Danny, I can't remember his last name, but he and Louisa had a past relationship in the original, and he was really sweet on her, and it really bothered Martin. And so Martin was really annoyed by him. It's same thing with this episode, with ours. I feel like the Blaze guy was really flirting with Louisa, and Doc Martin Best was not happy with that either. So that is what this character kind of reminds me of if we're talking about the two together. But other than that, I was really happy with this episode not being really a copycat. You really got to really enjoy it and not really know what's going on. But yeah, that is my take on this week's episode as a Doc Martin fan. I hope you enjoyed this episode recap. And I hope you enjoyed episode 4 as much as I did. And I cannot wait to see episode 5. And I will be back here next week with a review on that. But until then, take care. And I will see you back here next week. Whoa, whoa.